2020 has been a very difficult year for the United States as a whole, but parts of the country have hit harder than others. For example, if you live in a rural area that has not experienced any civil unrest and has not been severely affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, now your way of living may seem almost unchanged. If you see endless protests and riots and see COVID-19 roaming in local neighborhoods like wildfire, if you live in an urban area, your life in 2020 may look very different than it seems. Unfortunately, the conditions in our largest cities are likely to improve dramatically in the near future. But many people living in rural communities are feeling pretty good about things right now. Although more than 52 million Americans have made new claims for unemployment benefit over the past 18 weeks, the official unemployment rate is still single digit in many rural counties. I know it can be hard to believe, but the numbers tells us that. Unfortunately, it's a completely different story in most of our biggest cities. New York was one of the first epicenters of the COVID-19 outbreak in the USA, and many of us will never forget to watch video footage of the loot that happened in the heart of Manhattan earlier this year. As a result of all this chaos, the unemployment rate in the state as a whole is almost twice the national average. New York's unemployment rate rose to 20.4% last month, according to state-level data issued Friday by the Bureau of the Labor Statistics that detailed figures for some large metro areas. That's up from 18.3% in May and 15% in April. The ranks of unemployed New Yorkers have grown by 261,000 people since April to more than 811,000 according to the Bureau. The trend stands in contrast to the broader US labor market recovery in May and June. The US unemployment rate fell to 11.1% last month from 14.7% in April, largely driven by furloughed workers being recalled to their jobs as states began reopening their economies. New York, the hardest hit area of the country early in the health crisis, has been cautious in lifting the economic shutdowns officials imposed to contain the spread of COVID-19. We see a very similar story when we look at the city of Los Angeles. Thanks to COVID-19 and endless civil unrest, the official unemployment rate in the city is hovering near 20%. Los Angeles, the second largest US city, has seen a similar level of joblessness. Its unemployment rate recovered slightly in June, but remains startlingly high at 19.5% versus 20.6% in May, according to data published Friday by California's Employment Development Department. That reduction is in part due to rising coronavirus cases in California, which recently let go Gavin Newsom to reshut bars and suspend indoor activity for restaurants, wineries, movie theaters, and museums, among other businesses. Unfortunately, it seems that the COVID-19 outbreak and violence in our big cities will be with us for the foreseeable future. Some people think that if Joe Biden wins in November, civil unrest will disappear, but I don't believe this is the case. Almost all major cities where violence is experienced are controlled by radical Democrats, and these radical Democrats were unable to fully control the uprisings. According to the protesters, Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same coin, and both are responsible for injustice in our society and will not give up on their goals only because a moderate Democrat like Joe Biden won the election. At this point, millions of Americans are coming home nowadays due to millions of COVID-19 and all the restlessness. And this has been particularly devastating for the entertainment and hospitality industries. The unemployment rate in the leisure and hospitality industries, including restaurants, soared from 5.7% in February to 39.3% in April, and in June was still at an unprecedented 28.9%. By comparison, the overall unemployment rate is 11.1%, and no other industry comes close to restaurants' level. The restaurant industry employed nearly 9.2 million people in June, almost 3 million more than in April, but still 25% below where it was in February. Anecdotally, for restaurant workers, even those who have spent decades in the industry, say they're looking to get out. The line of work that had been stable, geographically flexible, reliable, and largely safe for generations is no more, they say. As I discussed the other day, we have lost thousands of people over thousands of small and independent restaurants, and this restaurant stink will get worse with each passing month. In the future, some cities may never be the same again. The official unemployment rate in Las Vegas has recently reached 29%, and everyone agrees that tourism will never recover until the pandemic ends. If this epidemic persists for several years, many of these unemployed workers will have to leave the city completely to find work elsewhere. Unfortunately, competition for the few good jobs available will become increasingly fierce, causing millions of Americans to drop out of the middle class. And we are starting to see some figures that show that this process is already very fast. According to the US Census Bureau, 24 million Americans say there is little or no chance of paying the rent for the next month. Think about this. We have never seen anything like it during the last recession, and the Census Bureau says things are especially horrible for Black and Spanish tenants. While Congress works to negotiate new coronavirus relief legislation, experts warn the time to ward off an eviction and foreclosure crisis has almost run out. We're about to fall off a massive cliff and see a major spike in evictions, says Alana McCargo, Vice President of House and Finance Policy at the Urban Institute. This month, nearly 28% of Black renters say they haven't paid last month's rent, and about 46% say they have slight or no confidence they will be able to pay next month's rent, according to figures from the Census Bureau's Household Pulse survey. Hispanic renters face similar economic strain. 22% say they missed last month's rent, and 46% fear they won't make rent next month. These numbers are just dazzling. As people increasingly return to their bills, screams for more direct state aid will be deaf, and both Republicans and Democrats in Congress seem to want to pass another incentive scheme. Of course, it will mean borrowing and spending bigger chunks of money that we don't currently have, but at this point, most Americans don't seem to care that we have completely destroyed our financial future. For such a long time, it turned out that the next economic downturn will be worse than the last recession, and that was exactly right. And what we are experiencing right now will be dimmed compared to what's finally coming. But the only thing that seems important to most people is what happens now and here. And now we are seeing tremendous economic pain in big cities across the country, and very few of our politicians in an election year want to be the bad guy who says we can't give free money everyone. Thus, our currency will continue to depreciate rapidly, our debt levels will continue to explode, and we will see where this relentless march towards socialism takes us. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.